Welcome to this Foxy production. This is the final episode of 3 that we have recorded discussing our decisions and process of buying and moving onto a narrowboat. In this episode, we talk about the pros and cons of living on a narrowboat. What are the nice things about living on a boat for you?
It's somewhere that is ours. It's our home. We own this because we were renting before. We never had that. It's ours. We can do whatever we want to it within reason, obviously. But if we want to do some DIY work, sure, we can do that. If we want to paint it, we can do that. If we want to chuck up some walls or knock some walls down, we can do that. We can have a pet. You know, there's so much more freedom that you get from it. I like the lifestyle, or the lifestyle it can lend itself to. The idea that eventually we might not necessarily have to work full time, or if one of us decides that we want to take a career break, we could potentially survive on one person's wage, or have the opportunity to be able to pursue other career aspirations on limited funds. It's just, I think it's also something that we've wanted for so long.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes it doesn't always compute that we live on a boat sometimes.
Well, I felt like I should cut you off because I don't think you're answering my question.
What are the good things?
What are the nice things about living on a boat?
Oh, on a boat.
Not the boat or this boat.
Oh.
Because all of those things you said could be applied to living in anything. What are the nice things about living on a boat? So I like it when the boat sways and rocks in the wind or with the water. It makes me feel like...
Oh, okay,
it makes me feel connected to the boats. I like that we have a solid fuel stove because it's a primitive and somewhat dirty form of heating the boat, but during the winter when you're trying to keep the heating running 24/7 for an entire week, the amount of work that you have to put in is quite a lot. And if you can keep that thing going for 24 hours a day and you can add some more fuel in and relight it without having to use matches or a fire lighter, it's quite rewarding. Okay, you've got to get up early in the morning to do that and make sure it doesn't go more than 8 hours without any top-ups or anything. But it's things like that. I can say the things I dislike. I don't like emptying the toilet every 3 days. How do you feel about emptying the toilet, Jen?
I haven't emptied the toilet since we've had the boat.
10 months ago. 300 days ago. 100 toilet changes ago. I've just done that math in my head. If that's off, then that's on me. There's good things and bad things. I know challenges are like things like storage, and it's a narrowboat. Trying to get past each other is really difficult. It's even more difficult since we got a dog. We've been stuck in the kitchen because he won't move. I
think as well, going back to the positives of living on a boat, it forces you to have a lifestyle change. One lifestyle change is that you can't have as much stuff as you would in a house. You have to be a bit more restrictive about the things you buy, about what you can keep hold of. You also have to lead a slightly more outdoor lifestyle. In winter, obviously most people tend to hibernate and they will stay inside mostly, but particularly when the better weather comes, you do find yourself spending a lot more time outside, and especially if you are cruising as well.
Yeah.
You're going to be out in the elements a lot more. It's a much more active lifestyle. Things are a lot more manual. So obviously we don't have a flushing toilet. We have a cassette toilet that has to be emptied. So obviously that has to be removed and disposed of. And
removed from the boat, taken to an emptying place, which depending on... I don't do it every 3 days, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it's 4 or 5. Depends how much we use it. Depends how lazy I'm feeling. Sometimes I can carry it to the toilet emptying place. Sometimes I have to get the trolley out. But we shan't go into details. This is where I put a sound effect of me emptying it. Glug, 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 glug.
I think those are two of the biggest draws to narrowboating, is the almost minimalist lifestyle you have.
We don't live a minimalist lifestyle.
Compared to how we were, we're much more...
Alright, we have 3 guitars instead of 11, but still.
But yeah, it does force you to change your perspective on things and just realise that you don't need all those things that the world keeps telling you need to have. I think that's definitely a positive that can't be understated enough.
Yeah.
So obviously there are drawbacks. So that you mentioned about the space earlier on. Yes, particularly when there is two of you and a puppy, it can be quite difficult to get around.
And what puppy do we have?
We have a golden retriever.
How big is he?
At the minute, he is 18 kilos.
Yeah, and he's 4 months old.
He's gonna be a big dog.
Yeah.
So obviously that brings different challenges, but you've also got storage, and particularly with our boat, it wasn't really designed for a couple and a dog to live on it, if I'm being honest. It was much more of a bachelor pad. There is like no storage apart from a couple of kitchen cupboards and a wardrobe.
No, there's no storage in this boat. There's no like wall cupboards or anything. It's we got one food cupboard where we used to have two. The fridge is an under-counter fridge that has a separate freezer. So think about that. That is a under-counter unit with a 2-shelf fridge and a 1-shelf freezer, whereas most people would have a separate under-shelf freezer to their under-shelf fridge, or a combined unit. And the funny thing is, in the bungalow, I always thought the fridge we had there was too small, and we've got one that's got a third of the storage of that. But actually, we kind of make do. I just don't buy broccoli because that doesn't fit in the fridge.
I mean, you kind of just have to get on with it. You just have to find a way to make it work, and unless you have the money to be able to completely refit the entire thing, which we do not have that money at the moment.
Or the wall space, because there's a lot of windows in this thing.
Yeah, so there's obviously space, and storage is one issue, and the storage is one that really frustrates me quite a lot. But also I think as well, something that we've learnt along the way is that what we thought we wanted doesn't suit us on a practical level, in terms of layout and in terms of the type of boat, the style of boat.
Let me just get this clear. I love this boat. Like, I genuinely love this boat. However, I already know what my next boat is going to be.
I think we're more or less in agreement of what the next boat is.
Yeah, we went to a boat show in February because, you know, we're boat people now.
We can go to these things.
Well, we can go to them anyway, but we're boat people now. We're going to do boat things. We're going to go to the Norfolk Broads, and we'll hire a day boat. We'll go on a cruise. We'll take a ferry to Spain for 22 hours or whatever stupid length it is. We're boat people now. And
boating is basically our personality.
Yeah, kind of. I'm like a vegan. If I can wrangle the fact that I own a narrowboat into a conversation, believe me, I will. But I have no idea. What were we talking about?
We went to Boat Life.
So we went to Boat Life, which is it's at the Birmingham NEC. It is what do they call it? A show?
Like an expo type show?
Yes, an expo. And they had just all manner of boats in there, from narrowboats to £1 million yachts and everything. We got to go into some boats that we had, some styles of boats that we hadn't had a chance to look at before. We'd seen online but hadn't physically experienced. And I think even before then we already thought, you can see the benefit to that. So for reference, our boat is a very traditional trad stern with a traditional layout and a traditional well deck. So trad stern means only one person can stand at the back. It's just a tiller, 2-foot space, and then the back doors to the boat. Bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, and then you're into the saloon, and then the front of the boat with the well deck. So that's a traditional boat layout. The well deck is actually quite large. I could sleep out there on the floor fully laid out, so it's probably about 6 foot long, not including the gas bottle at the very front part. Now, it's quite hard to get in, on and off the boat. Even us youngsters in our early 30s sometimes can feel how difficult it can be climbing under the crutch cover, but over a step and then bending down to go in the front door. Never mind trying to invite parents and grandparents and a puppy and everything like that. So we got the chance to see and experience a reverse layout boat. And a reverse layout boat, you just step onto the stern and it's so spacious, and there's seating. You could probably get 4 or 6 people on there comfortably, or squished if you're cruising. And then you go down a couple of easy to navigate steps into the kitchen, and then you're through to the living room area. A walk-through bathroom, which is slightly more balanced and more thought put into it than a traditional bathroom. And then you go through to the bedroom, which is at the front of the boat. Sometimes you have a small well deck. Sometimes you just have a nice window out to the world. So that's what we're going to get. A fully electric boat, because that's how long it's going to take us to buy one. Fully electric boat, and yeah, like I thought I wanted a traditional boat, a trad boat, because, you know, it's traditional and kind of liked it. And I do. But it has, I don't want to say restrictions, but it does have some negatives to it that just, they're awkward for awkward's sake, or they're awkward for tradition's sake. Whereas if you buck the trend and you get like a reverse layout boat and you don't worry about upsetting all the traditionalists, because there are people who like, oh, you got reverse layout, oh, you're woke generational. I don't know what words they use, but you know, as long as you do you get what you like, then if a reverse layout is for you, then a reverse layout is for you. I don't think there are that many brand new boats that are being built as traditional layout unless you absolutely specify it.
I think ultimately you've just kind of got to think of it as it's your boat, it's nobody else's business.
Yeah, of course.
At the end of the day, it's got to work for you, and there's no point going for a layout for tradition's sake to please people who aren't even going to live on your boat. Like, that is completely pointless.
Yeah, well, people are going to visit your boats. Our boat is restricted. Like, we've got people in our family who we want to come and visit, but just physically cannot get onto the boat because it's too awkward to get on. It's not. Narrow boats are by definition not disability friendly. Wide beams, no, you could make them, but narrow boats are just so narrow that outside of day boats, which are just a bus but with a boat, you couldn't get a wheelchair or anything like that down a narrow boat.
Or if you had something like that, it's bespoke built, but they're very few and far between.
And then you're going to lose out on, you know, you've got very narrow seating, very narrow galley. It's not being unfriendly to disabilities because it wants to be, it's because the canal network, 300 years old, is physically restricted to 7 feet in width in some areas, and you can't upgrade it. It's just not possible to do that.
The network was built at a time where disability friendly wasn't really a thing.
It didn't matter because I don't mean it that way. It didn't matter because the canals were built for business, not for people to holiday on. It was to move goods up and down the country before trains existed. There was no reason why someone who had a wheelchair 300 years ago would ever be on a narrowboat. So it wasn't a consideration, and we live with that restriction now. Wide beams, you can get. You could build a wide beam to suit a wheelchair, but even people who aren't in wheelchairs but are just less able to move around, like elderly people, a reverse layout is just more accessible to get onto. You might still have to duck and dive, but you don't have to twist your body. It's like on our boat, you have to step on the boat sideways and duck under and twist at the same time, which just in 10 years' time might be difficult even for us. But 10 years' time is future us's problem. Any other downsides of the narrowboat? Our boat's quite old, it's 30 years old, so it does get quite cold, it gets quite hot. The insulation is what's letting us down.
Yeah, 30-year-old polystyrene insulation.
It's not as bad as your car on a hot day, but it's not a lot better.
So we're currently in the middle of a heat wave of some description, and
It's 10 o'clock at night and it's 20 degrees.
So I work hybrid. I do 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, and I have been working from home for the last, well, not including today, 3 days previously. And the mornings are generally okay. It gets to about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it is miserable. It is so hot, it is sticky, it is stuffy.
We're on the water. The humidity here is going to be more than it is on land.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not conducive to being in an office job.
And you've got to deal with a puppy who has no idea what's going on because this is his first summer.
So there are two extremes. Like, we have literally had two extremes in our first year of living on a boat. We've had -7 in the winter, where we were frozen in, not once, but twice. When it's cold, it is cold. And, like, I remember particularly on that day when it was -7, the stove was roaring, and I had 3 pairs of trousers on, 3 pairs of socks, 3 jumpers, and, like, 3 blankets, and I was still cold. I mean, I'm quite a cold person anyway. I'm usually always cold, even to a certain point.
It was so cold, I put a jumper on.
You feel the temperature a lot more than you do in a traditional house. It's more extreme. Like, you are literally in a tin can.
Yeah.
It will get hot, it will get cold. So the weather is something that it can be a bit of a dividing factor. Coal dust.
Yeah, that was something I was aware of, but didn't realise just how bad it would be, and in fact I'm currently looking at the shelf behind the stove, which I haven't touched since November, and it's like, you could write "clean me now" on that. It just gets everywhere.
It gets in the butter dish.
Got in the butter dish. It just gets everywhere. You wouldn't believe. You just constantly having to clean things, or it builds up. White surfaces look black. Black surfaces, weirdly, look grey. It's in your glassware, on your crockery, if they're not inside a cupboard. Yeah, coal dust, it just gets everywhere. Sleeping. I'm not going to tell you how we sleep, but we went from a king-size mattress to a double-size mattress. Our double-size mattress is placed precariously on a small double. So I think it's a 6-foot bed on a 4'6" frame. The mattress overhangs the bed frame by a little bit, but enough that you feel like you're going to fall out every night. Whilst at the same time causes the mattress to be angled so that you roll onto me every night.
And when your boat lists, it's even worse.
Yeah, our boat is currently listed because we bought a new sofa and everything. All the weight is on one side of the boat.
That's also a design flaw in the layout. It's not ballasted correctly. You've got more things on one side of the boat than there are on the other, and it just doesn't balance correctly.
The ballast is bricks and other heavy things within the floor to counteract the furniture and everything that's in the boat to kind of keep it mostly level. So we have a job of ripping up the floor, finding the balance, shifting it all around to make the boat level again. That's a job for future me.
Future us.
Do you enjoy living on a boat?
Yes.
That's very quick to answer.
I do. Like, I've been asked multiple, like, ever since we moved onto a boat, I feel like it's probably the top conversation topic. Until we had Jasper, it was like the number one conversation that I would have with people. It just cropped into conversation, and people are genuinely interested. And because it's so different, like, a lot of people don't even realise it's a thing because they don't live near a canal, so it's not the norm. I like the fact that we live a slightly alternative lifestyle, even if it can make some aspects of life a little bit difficult. I like the fact that it has forced a change of perspective and a change of lifestyle. Even more so now we have a dog. I like that fact. I like the fact that it's also, although at the minute we are in a marina, there is a future goal at some point for us to be able to go cruising and have that freedom, that flexibility to be on the move.
And I think once we've done a bit more cruising, we'll be a bit more confident to go out just for the weekend here and there.
And the upside of that is that you don't have to do any packing. Like, you literally
go on holiday, just go.
You know, you take your house with you and all your possessions. You don't have to pack and unpack.
When we went on holiday, we used to take gaming consoles, laptops, guitars, but that all comes with us now, so it's fine. How was the transition for you? Was there a transition?
I don't think I found it that hard.
I think partly because we're in a marina, I don't think we had much of a transition. Cooking is, we've got a gas oven, gas grill, gas hob, which is an upgrade from where we were in a bungalow. It was a gas hob and a single electric oven, which I couldn't stand. Okay, we've got to fill the water up every weekend, but you know, we got water, we got hot water, cold water, we do have power and electricity. The biggest transition was just getting used to the smaller space.
I think a lot of people are always surprised by the modern conveniences you have on boats. Some people I've spoken to didn't realise that we have a TV and gaming consoles. We basically do everything we did in a house, just in a smaller space.
Yeah, we do it in one room instead of the living room and then a study like we used to, like apart. Like we used to. The funny thing is, I think, so the bungalow we were in, because it was a bungalow and it was an L-shaped bungalow, we could have been physically as far apart as almost the two ends of this boat is for the evening, like literally like 50 feet away, doing our own thing. Whereas now, yeah, we still do our own things, but we're a few feet apart, and that's something, you know, you have to consider. It's like, oh, do you really want to spend 24/7 or whatever within a 50-foot by 6.5-foot space with your other half, or if you've got a child or a dog or a cat or something like that? You know, it's a lot smaller space, so you're going to be a lot more on top of each other. I don't think we've ever really had an issue with that, short of record another podcast with a friend. Like, that's the only time it really ever crops up, is when I kind of need a quiet environment and don't want to impact on you. But we're quite good with, I think we're quite good at just spending time near each other, but without having to spend it with each other. You know, we can do things independently. But also, you know, things like you're playing on the Switch and I'm on the sofa watching a YouTube video. Instead of being in different rooms or slightly further apart, both of us can see each other's screens and we might be able to hear each other's things, but it's manageable. And we still do things together, watching TV shows or watch each other play a video game, which is something we sometimes do.
It was always something that we knew would be not an issue, but a consideration with living in a small space. The fact that you're not necessarily going to have that separation. You're just going to have to get used to the fact that you're sharing a small space with another person and that you might hear whatever the other person's doing, and that's fine. We always knew that was going to be a thing, and that was fine.
I'm not even sure I would really 100% build a brand new boat with that as a consideration. Like, I know we've spoken about a layout with a desk in the bedroom, but that's more for like work from home than having to kind of stay apart from each other, which it would help. It would probably be used in that sense, but that would enable one of us to work from the boat whilst the other could live normally, because at the moment, if Jen had to work from home while I was off work, we would be in the same room, and that would be a real issue because I would have to be mindful of Jen while she's working, whereas if we had the desk a door or two away from the main living space, then it's less of a concern. Would you do this again?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, we already know that. We are planning our second boat. I don't know how we're paying for it yet, but we are planning what's going to be in our next boat.
Would you?
Absolutely. Will you ever go back to living on land?
We have spoken about this in the past. Like, it depends on where we are, what our situation is, what's going on. Like, if we are required to go back on land, then we'll go on land. But if we can stay living on boats, I'm quite happy to do that until it's not an option.
And the other thing is, like, actually going back on land can include things like tiny house. Potentially in the future, if legislation changes or if something else happens that allows us to do something like that. You know, we move to New Zealand or something. You know, it'd be great to do something like that, similar but different. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm quite happy to be on a boat of some description for the long haul.
I think for me, it's living in a house comes with a lot of pressure. There's the financial pressure, not just of saving up for a deposit and then being able to get a mortgage and go through all of that, but it's the fact that you then have to maintain that. So, and houses are expensive. It's a case of, if you have the money to buy a boat outright, fantastic. If not, you have to look at marine mortgages or loans, which are generally over a smaller period of time compared to mortgages for houses. Most house mortgages are anywhere between 25 to 35 years. I think 35 is currently the maximum length loan period. But with that means that you then have to carry on working. You have to carry on working for longer. You're just in this constant rat race cycle because you need to be able to afford your mortgage payment, otherwise your house can be repossessed and stuff like that. And yes, if you have a loan on a boat, you still have similar things, but generally they're over a smaller period of time. So,
and it's a lower amount.
A lower amount as well.
Boats aren't cheap, but they are more financially accessible.
And the whole thing with the whole tiny house movement, it just frees you up to be able to live your life a bit more. It gives you more flexibility over your finances than what living in a house does.
We have hundreds of pounds a month more than if we were renting in this area.
And that's the thing.
And there are things we could change slowly that will make that gap larger. Living on a boat isn't cheap. Like, it comes with risks, like physical risks from like your boat sinking to financial risk depending on how you purchase your boat, or if you buy a dud boat and it requires a lot of work. The only difference between a boat and a house is the actual money you spend to buy it, but the issues are quite similar in a conceptual way as opposed to a practical way. But it's better to lose 60 grand on a boat than it is to lose 300 grand on a house, whether that's through a mortgage that you have to pay despite the interest rates being way dearer than when you bought it, or you're a cash buyer and it's dropped in price and it's worth less than what you bought it for. Like, there's risks for both, but with boats those risks are at a lower level. So one option for us is we live on the boat until we retire. Another option is we live on the boat and sell it to be the deposit for a house in the future. We don't know, maybe. Maybe we can buy a tiny house in New Zealand. Is there anything you miss about being in a house?
Washing machines.
Washing machines. You can get those a lot, but they take up a lot of space.
Yeah. So one thing I don't think I fully appreciated was how reliant you are on a washing machine in a house, and the fact that you just have unfettered access to a washing machine.
Even if you procrastinate and don't do any washing for a week.
You know, if you suddenly realise you've run out of underpants, you can just run to your washing machine, bung it on, put it on a wash, let it dry, and you've got underpants again.
So what are our options?
We don't have a washing machine on board, so our options are use a laundrette. They're not easily accessible. You do have to travel to them,
and they're not always open. Like the ones that I've tried to use are open shorter than office hours. Like they open at 10 and close at 3, so physically cannot get to them.
They're also quite expensive as well.
Yeah.
We do have an on-site laundrette. However, there are restrictions, so we can only use it within certain periods of time. It's also shared with other moorers here at the marina. So when there's only 2 washing machines and you've got, I don't know, for argument's sake, say 50 boats, potentially 50 boats trying to use those washing machines, your busiest times are your weekends because everyone's at work during the week. So it can be quite difficult to try and actually get in to get it washed. And there's other things as well with that. Yeah, I do miss having a washing machine. Like, we do have a twin tub washing machine, which is a washing machine, but it's
incredibly manual.
Very manual.
So instead of a washing machine where you bung it in, wait an hour and get it out, a twin tub is get it out, plug it in, put a hose in it, fill it up with water, which can take 10 minutes, run it for 15 minutes, empty it, spin the clothes, fill it up again with fresh water without any soap suds in it, put the clothes back in, run it for 15 minutes, drain it, and then spin the clothes again. And that takes an hour. Basically, it does everything a washing machine does, but you're doing all the hard work, and it does it manually. Each step is manual as opposed to what the washing machine would just do automatically. So it can be good on a narrowboat where you could potentially save water or save power. It doesn't use a lot of power because you're not there's no heating element. You put hot water into it. I mean, it uses the gas, but there's no electrical load, which is big sort of demand on the batteries that you might have. So it's something we can use, but it's definitely a massive, you've got to put an hour and a half into washing your clothes instead of an hour and a little bit. Oh, the puppy woke up. So yeah, and then I mean, even the laundrette we've got on site, 1 token only gets you a half-hour wash. 2 tokens gets you all the washes that don't give you a solid time, and you may need a 3rd token just to get your clothes out because it's run out of power and the magnets are locking the door in, and that has happened to me. It's quite infuriating. So we use a laundrette for big things like jeans and hoodies and everything that's smaller.
Or big loads when we're really low on clothes.
Well, I mean, they're small washing machines. You can't put a lot in them anyway, and we haven't got the drying space. So actually, smaller washing machines isn't a bad thing. But yeah.
You haven't seen me try to load one of those washing machines.
Yeah, but the more you put in there, the less it moves, and the less. If you've got clothes that have got like mud on them, they need to be able to move to get the mud off. That's part of the washing thing. If they can't move and can't spin, then the mud doesn't come off.
So that's definitely one thing I miss, is just having a proper washing machine. And it is possible to have one. You just tend to have slightly smaller ones, and obviously they tend to be plumbed in, but they do use a lot of water and electricity.
Yeah, and it's not that they use a lot of electricity, it's that they demand a lot of power. And I don't want to go into it too much, but it's like the amount of electricity they use is how much they demand plus time. And our boat cannot deliver the amount of power that a single washing machine needs. It's just too much for the electrical system on board. We can't even run, I don't even think we can run a plugged in drill or something like that. We can't run an air fryer for definite. It requires too much power. And if you're on a narrowboat, it takes up a massive amount of space. If you have a wide beam or a Dutch barge, then yeah, you've got room for days. You could put a washing machine, a tumble dryer and a dishwasher and have all the mod cons. But on a narrowboat, you have to pick and choose what you have. And everything comes with its pros and cons. Like, something we've not mentioned is our hot water comes from an instant hot water boiler. The pros are we don't have a massive hot water tank which takes up space. The cons is whenever you use the hot water, you have to wait 10 seconds or something for the water to cycle from being cold to then being hot, which is fine if you're washing up. It's livable if you're washing up. But if you're trying to have a shower, then it's constant. The temperature's constantly changing, and trying to shower a puppy, you don't want to scold him or make him too cold. It's like trying to be nice dog parents. So,
is there anything that you miss about living in a house?
Honestly, not really. All of my hobbies have translated onto the Narrowboat. Like we play video games, you can do that on a Narrowboat now. Podcasting, video recording, playing guitar. To a certain extent, I can do all of them. I think the most frustrating thing is the lack of kitchen countertop space. That is genuinely like my main concern with the boat.
But let's be honest, we didn't exactly have a lot of kitchen worktop space in the bungalow.
No.
So it's not something that we were missing.
No, but that's what I mean. It's like it's not a big thing. Like I wish we were out cruising more. Like genuinely, I wish we were. And I know that's going to come with downsides and cons that we're not fully aware of. We haven't really had to empty the toilets or do a rubbish run and try to work out where the nearest water point is from where we are, and we go 3 days because there's no water in the boat or something like that. But I do wish we were out using the boat for being a boat than a house. But no, I genuinely love being on the boat, and I genuinely love being on this boat. I love the freedom we have to do stuff, modifications. You just do random things like add hooks to the wall. If you've been in rental, that's a novel freedom, just putting some screws in the wall to hang your keys up, or fix a door here, or change a tap there. It's nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Any closing thoughts?
I think it's one of the best things we ever did, and I think in time it will only get better.
I think one of the main benefits is that this is genuinely something that we have both wanted, and that's obviously going to be a concern. Like if you're a couple or a family, one person might want to live on a narrowboat, but no one else does, so you're dragging them along. But we have genuinely both independently come to wanting to live on a narrowboat and deciding that this is something we actually want to do. This is a way we want to own our house, our home. And okay, we may have differences in terms of what colour we want the kitchen to be or little things like that, but actually the fact that we both want to live on the narrowboat is not one of us enforcing our dreams or wants or anything like that upon the other. That's probably been the best thing. The thing that's made it the easiest.
I think for me, although on a boat it's not possible to live an eco-friendly lifestyle, not on our boat anyway, we've got a diesel engine, coal stove,
and all our grey water goes into the canal.
In some ways it's a much simpler, and a big thing for me, I know I've spoken to some people about this before, but for me it's about not living beyond your means. It's always something I've been very aware of. The world always tells us we must have that latest gadget, we must have the best jobs, we must have the best cars, the best house. But that's not practical, and that's not how things should be. We're always taking from the world around us, and we're not really giving anything back, or we're not limiting ourselves. The world is overpopulated anyway, let's be honest, and we're using more and more of its resources, and that's something I have been very keenly aware of the last few years. And okay, I might not be able to grow my own vegetables, but or at least not on a scale that I would like to, if we had our own place, bit of land, and we could have a huge vegetable patch and stuff. But living in a smaller footprint where we only have X amount of resources, so we only have like X, a certain amount of water we can hold in our tank, and we have to use that sparingly, particularly if we're out cruising where we don't have instant access to taps and stuff, or water points, sorry. Being conservative with what we're using and just being a bit more thoughtful about stuff. And I think that for me is one of the highlights of this kind of lifestyle. Yes, it's hard and it's not for everybody, but for me it's one of the big highlights of living an alternative lifestyle, and it's something that I really want to kind of lean into a bit more, certainly as we can, whether that's with a new boat with a souped up solar system and batteries and stuff like that, so that we're using the sun more than an electric bollard,
which comes from coal power plants and other dirty sources.
It's impossible, I think, in today's world it's impossible to live a totally 100%, what's the word I'm looking for, not eco-friendly, but
it's not like you're trying to have as little impact on the environment as possible.
Yeah, it's impossible. Like, with the way things are manufactured in this day and age, it's not possible. But even to just do a little bit, for me, that's one of the best things. And I love it.
Thank you for listening to this series of episodes about our move onto a narrowboat. We hope you have enjoyed listening, and if you are inspired, we highly recommend checking out some YouTube channels to learn about life on the canals, or even book a holiday on a narrowboat to experience it for yourself.